Hello everyone, and welcome to this presentation on Proposal 5.3 on judicial provisions. My name is Thomas Delay, and I'm Head of Legal and Governance for the Badminton World Federation. Before jumping into the proposal, I'll give you a brief background about the judicial procedures. So here is the BWF judicial system as it is right now. It's really the result of many years of growing. The way it works is that at the bottom you see two bodies in gray, the External Judicial Experts Group and the Standing Disciplinary Panel. Those are feeding bodies, so they give their members to the Disciplinary Hearing Panel or to the Ethics Hearing Panel or the Anti-Doping Hearing Panel to hear cases. The Anti-Doping Hearing Panel deals with anti-doping cases, Ethics Hearing Panel with integrity cases, while the Disciplinary Hearing Panel has sport-related cases. In the situation of the Disciplinary Hearing Panel, if there's an appeal, it goes through the hearing panel, appeals panel, and then on to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Now, over the years, we've identified a number of issues with this system, and I will try to summarize them. The first one is that there are very few appeals to the appeals panel. This means that in the past 10 years, we've counted 2 cases going to that panel. The problem with that is that when you're brought to interpret and use rules every 5 years, on average, you will be a lot less familiar with the rules you're supposed to be interpreting. The second issue is in relation to redundancy. So for example, here we have a feeding body that provides its members to the Anti-Doping Hearing Panel, to the Ethics Hearing Panel, but there's really no purpose for this group apart from feeding members into those 2 hearing panels. Likewise, the Standing Disciplinary Committee feeds members into the Disciplinary Hearing Panel, and we think that this creates too heavy a structure for what we really have to work with. The third reason is in relation to anti-doping. So up to now, the Anti-Doping Hearing Panel was responsible for anti-doping cases. However, since 2 years ago, the Court of Arbitration for Sport has created the anti-doping division, and the BWF has decided to outsource its anti-doping cases to this new court, to this new anti-doping division of the Court of Arbitration for Sport. So there is really no reason for the Anti-Doping Hearing Panel to exist. The final reason, or the final way in which this system could be improved, is that while it's fit for purpose, it could be used by the CCs. However, the way it was built in our regulations makes it impossible for the CCs to use. So instead, the CCs, some of them have developed their own system, some of them don't have any system for disciplinary cases, and we thought we could build something from the ground up together. Looking now at the 2020 judicial procedures, they were refreshed, based on our current needs, and also based on a few years of experience where we have interacted with our CCs, with our member associations on how it could be improved. The first way it was improved is that it's much more simple, and we will see that in the next slide. The second way it was improved is that now continental confederations can use it. If there is a case coming from a CC, they can put it in front of the BWF system in order to deal with it, rather than have their own parallel system. And the third way in which it was improved was in relation to investigations and hearing processes. In the past, there were many things that were written, that were not written, that were inconsistent. Now we have sought to harmonize and to put some order into our rules. So the new system looks as you see on the screen. There are 2 panels. There's a sports disciplinary panel responsible for sports cases, and there's the independent hearing panel, which is responsible for governance cases, integrity cases, and as an appeal panel to the sports disciplinary panel on sports cases. Decisions by the independent hearing panel can be appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Now, who is a member of those panels? In the case of the sports disciplinary panel, it will be people from the badminton community. For example, you will have BWF council members, you will have representatives from the CCs. So we're really talking about people, individuals who are familiar with our sport. In the independent hearing panel, we have lawyers. We have individuals who are familiar with sports integrity, sports governance. Most importantly, these people are independent from the Badminton World Federation. We want outsiders to review the cases rather than have insiders who may or may not know the people whose case they are reviewing. Looking now at what do we mean by these types of cases. For sports cases, we're talking about breaches of the codes of conduct for players, for coaches, for educators, and so on. Our typical example would be, imagine you have a player throwing a chair at another player on the court. That would be a breach of the code of conduct for players. Now, in that case, the sports disciplinary panel would be competent, and it would be chaired by people who are familiar with the sport of badminton to know what should be the consequences of throwing a chair at someone else on the court. By integrity cases, we mean breaches to the code of ethics and to the code against match fixing. While finally, for the governance cases, we're talking about, for example, there could be many of them, but let's say challenge to elections. So suppose you're unhappy with the way elections were carried out as a candidate, you could first file a protest as a CC member, for example, to your CC, and that decision could be appealable then to the independent hearing panel, which would give a fresh look to your situation to see if election rules were properly followed. Let's now have a look at the actual proposal, or first, more exactly, at why we need your vote, or why do you need to vote. The judicial procedures, as you may recall, are a council responsibility. And the reason for this is that they are very detailed and they are very technical. They tend to change often, so we need flexibility around them. They define also all the panels we have seen and the way they work. However, the Constitution is the legal framework for these judicial procedures to exist, and they are an AGM responsibility. So before the judicial procedures enter into force, we need approval from the AGM through the BWF Constitution. So the BWF Constitution will say, for example, the BWF shall have independent hearing panel, a sports disciplinary panel, and then the judicial procedures will define how these panels work. This leads me to the actual proposal. So the first part of the proposal 5.3 would be to approve amendments of the Constitution to come in line with the 2020 judicial procedures. And of course, as I just explained, this would create the legal framework for the new judicial procedures to exist. The second part is more related to the independent hearing panel. And the proposal is to delegate council the power to appoint the president, deputy president, and members of the first inaugural independent hearing panel. This would be subject to confirmation by the 2021 AGM, so the one in the following year, next year, and that panel would be working until the 2022 AGM. Now, why do we need this special authorization? In the future, according to the judicial procedures, the AGM will be asked to confirm nominations put forward by the council. However, for the time being, we need to have an independent hearing panel that has members so it can function. So on an exceptional basis, we're asking our dear members to approve for the council to be able to appoint the members of the panel, subject to the members' confirmation next year. I hope this is clear, but if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and next presentation will be on Proposal 5.4 on gender and geographical representation. Thank you.